My first film is a 2024 reflexive experimental docudrama about a young female filmmaker revisiting her first chaotic attempts at finishing a feature film. For some reason, it opens in that playful postmodern multimedia sort of way which makes you feel more like a participant than a spectator, with that procrastinating thing where the filmmaker doesn't know how to start their film, which suggests that maybe they shouldn't start. Like, why does everything need to be a film or content? Can you not just live?
We are all the authors of this film.
Like, struggling artists used to be people who didn't have the means to create their art or the audience to appreciate it, but now it seems like now the struggle is more like a need to document everything but no reason to do it. Anyway, the filmmaker then laments how things used to be simpler, which is something I completely agree with, having studied film for some years. Like, actually understanding every element of the filmmaking process doesn't make things easier, it makes it more difficult, because you have a far greater number of approaches to consider with every creative decision. It also shits on the idea that there are only so many stories to tell. There aren't. If you sat in front of a blank page, you'll know that there are endless amounts.
Okay, whatever this decision is, can you just make it yourself?
Anyway, I've read elsewhere that this film's considered a very radical film that pushes the boundaries of the medium, but it just feels like something very current to me. It's very trendy. It has a lot of the tropes that I'm noticing that do my head in. You know, its driving force is a feeling or a trauma that taints everything around it. You know, it's designed intentionally to blur the lines between reality and fiction, which does bring the viewer closer to the subject, but doesn't necessarily illuminate anything. It just adds complexity where depth could be. It tickles with the idea of making the personal universal, but then it doesn't actually do that by making the story personal, you know, by actually portraying a character who's three-dimensional and believable and understandable, or displaying the things that make or made a person unique in any way before the trauma or pain happened to them, so that we have a frame of reference when we see them making bad decisions, and we understand that the behaviour is not normal for them and that something's wrong, and what is that thing that's wrong? We don't get any of that.
It's on a lot of Adderall.
You know, and I know I'm talking about a traditional first act here, and this is supposed to be a sort of a radical departure from such traditions, but if you're going to throw something out that works effectively, then replace it with something that also works. Also, 2001: A Space Odyssey has a 3-act structure. There's no way this is more radical than that. You know, there's nothing really radical about it. It's just trendy, which means it'll be forgotten by next week, and the filmmaker will be forgotten by next week because they haven't actually put anything of their what makes them unique there. You know, they've just reduced themselves to a trauma, not a human being. And there's some talk in the film about the digital revolution that occurred around the time that DSLRs came out, but the only sort of revolution that it's embracing there is the freedom to now go out without a plan and just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and then edit it together into a collage afterwards, and then be praised for how daringly inconsistent it is. And bragging about how the film is esoteric, so it's not actually for everyone, so if you don't like it, then it's probably your fault. It's just disclaimers within disclaimers within disclaimers within disclaimers. And that's another trope of this genre that I'm going to call trauma trolling. Nothing's ever the creative person's fault. You know, these pieces are so personal, but there's never any personal responsibility involved. You know, Donnie Dunn just bought Martha a tea. He didn't follow her home or anything else, and anyway, he was messed up from all those times he kept going back to get drugged up and fingered. None of those were his choices. They just happened. Bo Burnham had to lock himself away in that cabin in his girlfriend's garden and watch the worst of the internet until his head hurts. He didn't choose to do that. He didn't choose to get paid $3.9 million to do that. It's not the artist's fault. It's your fault if you don't get it. Obviously, if you don't connect with a work that's esoteric because it's told you that it's esoteric, then it's your fault for not being esoteric enough. It can't be the filmmaker's fault for not communicating the ideas well enough. By the way, if you want a real discussion about the digital revolution, then click on this link and see what Cody Clark has to say, because he's the real deal in truly independent cinema world and deserves all the support he can get.
Why aren't you taking it seriously?
But anyway, back to this. Jeez, I've ragged on it quite a bit, but sometimes films just rub you the wrong way, don't they? But you know, maybe I'll revisit it sometime and it'll mean more to me, because at the end of the film it did leave me with a sort of warm wave of reassurance that we keep going because the questions we want answers to keep changing as we grow and we learn, and that's cool. That's the fun of it. We are the Don't Tell Show. If you liked, please subscribe. You probably didn't though, did you?